The loathing howls. The loathing spreads. The loathing consumes. Every road must end.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another Guts and Blackpowder video. Part 3, baby! Woo! Anyway, as you might know, there was an update for the game, adding 2 new maps, but whilst these maps have added some lore, a lot of changes were done to the official lore page that has changed the timeline and retconned some stuff. So let's just get right into it. But before we do...
Want a break from the blight? Well, now you can, by subscribing to Top of King's YouTube channel. Not only can you watch YouTube videos to keep yourself entertained in the zombified Europe, but you'll also be able to tell your fellow soldiers what the hell is going on. So what you waiting for? Subscribe today.
Emptiness and dissolution have wormed their way into the world.
Berezina is the newest map added in Guts and Blackpowder that is different from the rest, as it's known as a holdout mode. Holdout mode, as of current, seems to just be a mix of endless and objective, as it has a lot of zombies come in waves and such, whilst it has the objective of building the bridge to get to the other side. Berezina, in terms of lore, currently is the first map chronologically and takes place on November 28th of 1812. The map mirrors the Battle of Berezina, where Napoleon was retreating from Russia as the Russian army began to advance on them. Here, though, the Russian army isn't the enemy, but instead the undead hordes are, as you play soldiers tasked with building a new bridge to cross over the icy river of Berezina, ordered by Claude Victor Perrine. This is all because, as the official lore states, as French forces retreat, a trigger-happy Frenchman blows the initial bridge across to Berezina. Once you build the bridge, the French 9th Army Corps retreats and a wagon comes to pick up your team. The map ends upon completing that objective. In this new map, there's a note that states, "I write so as not to drift to sleep, thus slipping away from this fire. This is no pass to be made across this forsaken river. We have been abandoned and left to smolder. We are men of Victor's 9th Corps, and but stragglers from the former bridge encampment. The bridge was built and destroyed by a trigger-happy fool. Now we wait for the Cossacks to split us open and eat us alive." Victor believes the construction of yet another miraculous bridge construction. I see no such conclusion. I fear I won't make it through this bitter night. I feel my strength wavering. The bodies of the stragglers have washed up upon our new encampment. They look dead yet still hunger. That is for the flesh of their brothers. Whatever affliction drives them is horrifying. They cannot be trusted. They cannot be reasoned with. Every hour we lose more to them. If dark frost doesn't end it, they'll pull you away, and that is it. The note is just a nice explanation as to why we're in Berezina to begin with, but also tells us about the undead, as no one really knows what's going on with them, only that whatever is making these their brothers crazed is kind of horrifying. It's also mentioned that zombies are washing up, and from what we can see, yeah, they're pretty resistant to the cold and even water. So much so that they walk at the same speed on water compared to a player, which, if you walked on the water, you would be slower. But with this note, it doesn't really provide much story than what's already been explained. But everything, we'll talk a little bit about how this plays into the bigger role of the entire story and lore later. But for right now, let's move on to the next map that was added, the Tyrolean Village.
Another nameless city. Another inferno of mutilation and madness.
Finally, a Bavarian map. Thank God for the Bavarian representation, because this free state, nation state, whatever you want to call it, is just too good to not have had a map. Anyway, the Tyrolean Village is an endless map situated on the mountains. It doesn't seem to have any real-world battle attached to it, as the day it takes place is April 26, 1814. And doing some research, I wasn't able to find anything that occurs in a certain Tyrolean village on that day. And the village just seems to be a pretty generic one, given that it has no real name or specific name attached to it, in comparison to something like San Sebastian, the fortress, Berezina, Cobb, etc. In context to the lore, the village makes a lot of sense, considering it's one of many villages that both the Bavarian and Austrian forces found through their trek in the Alps that was abandoned. It seemed the plan was to go north of the Alps, then disperse into the Germanic land, but that didn't really fall through, with the undead surrounding them from all angles, except the west. The only option left of the surviving armies was to make a final stand and quite literally die on a hill. There is also another letter here. Man, the devs are being very generous today with us, aren't they? But it talks more about the current situation in Germanic land, and it's to basically say everything in Germany is looking pretty hopeless. The letter goes, "It's been just days since we passed through Württemberg. They surround us on all sides, north, south, east. What little command remains has the goal of passing through the Alps and spitting out up north. It'll certainly work for the Austrians. I don't know how you say Österreicher, I don't know. But I fear the worst for my dearest Baron. There weren't as many of them in Württemberg. Stuttgart was gone. We've come across few in the mountains, but every town we marched into is desolate. I pray every night that this evil doesn't reach the streets of Munich if it hasn't already. It's as if every day half our manpower is lost, either by their brute force or their sickness catches up to one of us. As of the time of writing, we've found ourselves settling down in one of the many vacant villages. The villagers are long gone, perhaps weeks. The dried, blood-stained walls indicate that this village too fell victim to the pestilence. We can hardly forage to keep ourselves fed. The scouts, I don't know, jaguars, I don't know. The scouts push through the pass and believe they've spotted a giant mass of them marching. They figure if we can keep our presence here silent, they'll pass through without issue. I've come a long way, and I've fought this evil since Russia. I know they don't abide by their senses. They'll trudge their way through this town and find us regardless of our hiding. It'll be a massacre. I write this note with the belief I'll be dead by tomorrow. I don't plan to desert. I'm tired of running. The others are still oblivious, believing they'll pass through without a hitch. I will defend this village with my life, and surely we'll all fall. When we do, I hope we'll break even and make a greater dent to their numbers. Final regards, Erdhard Dentlinger of the 5th Precinct. Württemberg is likely a reference to the Kingdom of Württemberg, which existed west of Bavaria, which had joined the Confederation of the Rhine. It seems that it's not doing so hot, and many Bavarians didn't make it there. Stuttgart, the capital of Württemberg, is gone, and likely just means that the capital has fallen. After that, it's said that our current group, the army that we play as in the game, is slowly dying out, and that's what's worse, is that there's a huge wave of undead coming. Their best hope seemed to just have them pass by, but our boy Erdhard knows better, and knows that they'll come after them. But he's tired of running, so he'll face them anyway. Erdhard concludes with acknowledging that he'll be dead by tomorrow, and that he's lived from Russia to here. But he's hopeful that when the squad inevitably falls, they can make a dent in the undead menace. With the maps out of the way, let's talk about the current state of Europe, and what these two maps have actually brought properly into the timeline, as well as some retcons that I'll be mentioning here because they're actually really important to the lore.
Our great cities burn. All that beauty and knowledge, ash on the wind.
Starting off with the first retcon, the Blight's first appearance changed from June 28th of 1812, which was the very first mention that I made in the first video. Instead, it's now mentioned that the Blight appeared at some point during the Russo-Ottoman War, but had no reanimation properties until Napoleon's burning of Moscow, when it gained the properties of reanimation. So the Blight's reanimation date comes after September 14th, 1812, as that's when Napoleon first enters the city. It can be at any point afterwards, up till from September 14th all the way to December, where we already know that the infection has begun. So before this and reanimation properties, it just seems that the Blight seemed to have a high mortality rate, but just was a normal virus or disease. It's also implied that the zombification thing seems to be more supernatural rather than the disease just developing it. Afterward, the first map in chronological order, post, zombie infection and everything, is now Berezina instead of Vanderhaus. The next thing is that the Tyrolean village is 6th on the list chronologically. Another retcon that they added was actually that the catacombs, which was, I believe, the original 6th map chronologically and took place in 1814, now is actually the last map, taking place after all endless modes in June 1815 instead of 1814, where it was originally. I think this has some heavy implications in the story, as the armies of the French and the coalition not only were pushed back into France, as it took a year to actually mainly have Belgium be overrun, or most Belgian towns to be overrun by the zombie horde. But now they've been pushed back so far to the point where the undead is threatening Paris, with an evacuation being done. So it also isn't really looking very hot for the north of France, since the campaign to dispel the zombies from Belgium and most of Central Europe, as it was seen in the magazine, that, oh, they were gonna push all the way, they were gonna liberate all of Central Europe and everything. Yeah, it seems that they might not be able to anymore. And if anything, the campaign ended in kind of a big failure now, with all the forces retreating into mainland France. But yeah, that's basically it currently for retcons and story. But it's not the end, because I have to address literally everything, and the next thing I want to address is finally the things I got wrong from my previous videos.
When all is lost, we cling to what we can remember.
So I was originally going to explain literally everything I got wrong, and then explain some corrections and all that stuff, and then the video turned out to be like 17 minutes long. So in order to cut that down, because it really doesn't need to be 17 minutes long, it's just a list of some of the things I got wrong that I believed were important to correct or include a greater explanation for. If you want to learn more about certain things I got wrong, or perhaps what you guys might have gotten wrong in the comment sections, no harm, of course, you can check out the misconception board on the Guts and Blackpowder official wiki. Link will be in the description for the wiki, so you can just check out there. Maybe your theories are right, maybe your theories are wrong, they just haven't been disproven yet, or maybe they have been proven right. Who knows? Up to you, of course, but obviously this is just my small list. But yeah, thank you guys so much, and yeah, this bit will probably end right about now.
Limbus Company!
Everything is subject to change, so yeah. But yeah, currently, that is the story of Guts and Blackpowder. There wasn't many big change. Well, there were some big changes, at least when it comes to the lore. But in terms of the game, 2 new maps were added, some extra tools were added for sappers, and I think some changes were added for certain maps. Not much really happened, but it was just notable story-wise. I'll probably make a part 4, but honestly, there just has to be a really big update for that enhances the lore. But this is where I think I'll leave it. I think I'll leave the series for now. I'm gonna move on to some other projects I got working, so I hope you do all enjoy those when the time comes. But for now, that's Guts and Blackpowder Part 3, the story explained. I've been Top Hat King, and bye bye.